Hey gang, got a serious case of the Mondays, right? This guy knows what I'm talking about. Happy Monday. We're still here, pushing through for a week. I don't know what week it is, but we're on our way. Um, I'm here to talk with you about Penn and Teller's bullshit, which we watched on Friday in class, and hopefully you watched at some point on your own. Um, had had a handful of comments and just some thoughts I wanted to pass on to you guys because again, like you know, what's this course if there isn't some sort of input from me, the alleged expert on these things? If you were just doing it online and commenting into thin air, what's the point of that? So I go through. I'll reiterate some stuff that we talked about in class on Friday and sort of synthesize it with your comments. So keep the comments coming, not just for your grade, but for college education. Anyway, Penn and Teller bullshit. I mean, it's not for everybody. I don't even like Penn and Teller. I think, well, one, they're magicians, so we should be skeptical of them as human beings right off the bat. Um, but Teller, what's not to like about him? Keeps his mouth shut. And Penn is the big, tall guy who runs his mouth a lot. He can be abrasive and obnoxious, and he is like that across the board. Like that's kind of his persona. But I think it's best used in this format of this sort of expose mockumentary style show, right? I think he's purposefully it is he's annoying tactically, if that makes any sense. He's deploying his annoying and sort of abrasive personality for the best results on a show like this. That and I said this a bunch in class, but your primary takeaway from this show, whatever episode you watch, should be, man, I take way too much for granted. I gotta start looking into things more. I can't just. There's too many things I blindly accept, right? And Melissa's um, Melissa's comment was kind of. I even wrote down. I'm like, Melissa, you go, girl. The whole. No, I'm taking a stand. I'm going to start and be more skeptical and ask more questions, and don't just stop blindly just doing things because mom said or Uncle Sam said or whatever you want to call it. It has that, like, that's what this show is about for me. Every episode, I've seen the whole series. There's like 6 or 7 seasons, so they cover a lot of ground too because every episode is topical, like recycling and all these kinds of big things that they're just there to kind of poke holes in preconceived notions about things. And this leads me to something that I've been thinking about for the last like 10 years or so, which is like, and I call it the process of belief. So, like, you grow up believing certain things, right, about the world, right? A lot of what you believe is through your religion, which you get from, and 9 times out of 10, your parents or your family or your traditions and things like that. And like that's great. Like where else are it's good to have a base of beliefs and values and morals and things like that. But at some point you have to go through a process of learning why you believe those things. You should never just believe anything because. So for me, humor is facilitates this process of belief. Humor for me in my life, um, not everybody's, but made me question everything, right? It's like I heard growing up all these things about God and religion and, how the world works. And I just kind of believed it. And then I'd hear comedians talk about those things in totally different ways, which made me seek out my own beliefs, sort of like fact checking my own beliefs. And as I dug into it, I was like, wait, I don't believe that. I don't believe this. I do believe this. So you have to, at some point, go through a process of understanding why you believe what you believe. I don't care what you believe, like in any capacity. I just care, I just ask that you would know why you believe it. And if the answer is because everyone else does, because it's what my parents do, because it's my religion, because this, that, the other, that's probably not the best reason to believe that. So for me, a show like Bullshit is a great sort of catalyst for going through a process of belief. In this case, about recycling, right? You go into it thinking, I believe in recycling and it's going to change the world, it's going to help the environment. But until you hear those opinions and those statistics, you don't really know. You've only heard one side. So and again, I don't think Penn and Teller or anybody at the show cares what happens after the process of belief. If you go through and you see the show and you fact check it and you go back and you're like, you know what, they're kind of full of shit. I still believe in recycling. Then they're like, fine, at least you've gone through this process of belief, and too few people do. They just sort of fall in line. But you also have to be honest and secure enough in yourself to, if you see a show like this and you go through this process of belief, to be like, shit, I was wrong. If you come out on the other side and you agree with them, then that's, I mean, I don't even want to say that's a win. Who's that a win for? It's a win for you, the individual, for having gone through a process of belief and on now understanding why you believe what you believe. So, someone mentioned it in their comment, and probably because I said it Friday, but I don't remember if I said it. Another thing that, or creed, that kind of runs through a lot of my classes is this idea that we as a culture would rather coast with the bullshit than grapple with the truth. Like we'd much rather, it's easier to just be like, just recycle because they said it's good. Just do it. Like, even if it's bullshit, it's easier to do that than to take the time and do your research and look things up and ask questions and try to get to the bottom of things. It's just easier to be like, yeah, they've always done it this way, just do it. But the more you do that, it's a slippery slope into just being, a complete corporate shill or something, So register that in your brain because it'll come up repeatedly, right? We'd rather coast. We don't want the truth. We act like we do, but I don't think if we really knew the truth about all these kinds of things, we'd our heads would explode. So it's just like just shut up and sit down over there, right? We got everything under control. Says the government, corporate America, you know, religion, whatever, whatever institution might be sort of pulling the strings. Um, so back to the show itself. You got to get through Penn Gillette's just obnoxiousness, and that's part of interpreting humor is like get past. Oh, I hate this guy, but he's kind of saying something that could be worthwhile, and he is right. So I think the takeaway from the show, why it exists, is asking us to think, ask questions, be skeptical about everything, including their show, including the very episode that you're watching. It's super meta that way. And we should be. Like a lot of you mentioned that. Like, well, they're doing the same thing that they're sort of railing against. Well, I think it's tongue in cheek to some extent. And I think they play up that. I think they play up that side of of the of the show for effect, right? Again, comedy doesn't really care. Humor doesn't really care about what you believe. They just care that you think about it. So this show, I've said this now. I don't even think Penn and Teller care if they change your mind about recycling. But I think they would hope that at least you're more informed about recycling. Like those of you who are staunch recyclers, and I believe in it, maybe this cast some doubt and you went out and you did research and you found, no, they're wrong, I'm right. But now you have a better understanding of it. Like who mentioned, one of you guys mentioned, shoot, it was Peter, right? The funny part of this is that 95% of the people that recycle can't accurately describe how exactly they're helping the environment. It's like, don't you think that would be important and helpful if those, those who were sort of for it and proponents of it could tell you why it could have a rebuttal for these types of shows and sentiments. They don't. They're just doing it because it helps the environment, and that's the end. We all need to be more informed about even our own opinions, even if they differ. We need to be better informed about them. I don't think they care about what your stance is on recycling or any other of the topics that they do episodes about. Then that's a comedic convention. Comedy in general is the least agenda driven, sort of least biased form of media. I mean, there's always going to be bias in virtually everything that you encounter, right? I think we understand that. So you want to minimize bias, right? And I think comedy, because it's not invested in your, look at that, it's not invested in, it doesn't have anything to gain from you believing what they believe or them convincing you otherwise. But the culture benefits from you rethinking things and going through a process of belief, basically. There's no corporation behind comedy, right? They want to make you laugh. They're not trying to get your vote, right? So, politician, everything a politician says has to be, you know, taken with a grain of salt because they have an agenda. They have an agenda. They want you to do something for them. Religion is kind of the same way, right? The really biggies have an agenda behind them that comedy typically doesn't. So you might have a little bit on a TV show, right? Because the network and all the sponsors and things like that. But this show on Showtime, you get up in the HBO and Showtime and the pay cable channels, that's gone. They've given them the money to do the show that they want to do. So that should be refreshing to watch a show like this and be like, they don't care what I think at the end. They just care that I think. And that, I think, is a liberating realization to have. Question the seemingly unquestionable. I wrote that for some reason. I think because, one, they do this documentary style, so I think cast some aspersions onto the way we treat documentaries. Like, oh, I saw it in a documentary, so it must be true. Well, not necessarily. It sort of exposes the secrets of the documentary genre, which is it's not all true, right? They can't show you everything, so there are editing choices made. Oh, don't show them this, don't show them that, show them this. That shapes truth. That shapes agendas, and you're never getting the whole story, and that can be pretty frustrating. And also, and a couple of you mentioned this in your comments too, right? Data can be manipulated, 1,000 different ways to support virtually any opinion or idea or whatever. You can find people and pay them off to say the thing. I mean, it's been happening. Our world's based on it. Data manipulation, and you can make a fucking pie graph and make it pretty colors. Everybody like, ooh, a graph. This guy knows what he's talking about. Like, it's, again, that's coasting with the bullshit instead of, struggling or wrestling with the truth. But I think that's part of what this show is about. It almost works against itself, or it presents all this information and says, ask questions, and it's really asking you to ask questions about the very show that you're watching, as we mentioned. Nick brought up, and a bunch of you brought up this idea, right? We should all be doing more research. And now, this came out in 2004. So, Amanda, no. We did know plenty about recycling. Recycling had been going on for 30 years. But do your research. This kind of brings up, especially now, since we're so far removed from this episode, where do you even do research now? With the way that social media, specifically like Twitter and Facebook and things like that, have segmented truth, where it's like now there's two realities. There's basically a conservative reality and a liberal reality, and you can find 10 stories and articles and studies that back up whatever shitty thing you believe. So it's like, where is the truth anymore, right? There's such a what's the word? There's a premium on truth now. I don't even know where you would go to get it. But yeah, I think that doesn't mean we should stop digging for it or seeking it in some way. I just choose to I use comedy. That seems to me the most reliable source, ironically, for truth. Like, I think comedians, the best ones, the good ones, are invested in that, and care about the truth. So, sue me, I guess. Um, Amanda, Amanda, you did a good job of tempering your anger. Uh, and you mentioned being butthurt. I don't think you were butthurt. I think your criticisms of the show are fair. For sure. Like, I 100% agree, right? Penn, Penn Gillette, the big guy who just runs his mouth. He's a little much. So, I don't, you know, I don't think anybody who says that is butthurt. That's true. Um, but I don't think what he's trying to do is a little much. His methods might be. His methods are a little much, but I don't think what he's trying to do is too much. Um, right? The way I look at it was the most obnoxious people in that episode are the experts, right? They're the ones who seem to have this like, well, if you don't recycle, like it's the coolest thing to do. Like, what's wrong with you? And kind of spitting their bureaucratic nonsense at you to really disguise, you know, what they're really trying to do, which is, you know, laugh all the way to the bank, basically. Um, and we talked. I think Megan brought it up, but I could be wrong. Am I wrong? I can't remember. It's this idea about, now it's recycling has become this industry where it's for profit now. You got to sell these special bags, or you got to buy these special bags. You have to take it to the dump yourself, like whatever it is. All these different ways, and even the segment on the episode about subsidies, about how the government makes it look like it's turning a profit, but it's really not. Like, our money is being used to buy it, and we probably wouldn't do it otherwise. Um, but yeah, what he's trying to do, right? My interpretation is that those experts are the ones who were sort of pompous and obnoxious. That was just me. Um, and certainly more harmful than Penn Gillette's form of, you know, yeah, he's just loud and obnoxious. These guys are sort of like disingenuous and obnoxious in that way, and that's way more dangerous than just a loud mouth. Um, yeah, they were the most obnoxious with their holier than thou bureaucratic bullshit, you know, and just the hit your hat like pale face, just to your face, just like nope. Even the guy who wrote the seminal paper about how the landfills were running out of landfill space, that guy looked right in the camera and was like, "Oh no, I didn't say that." Like, and they pull it right out of the paper. They pulled it. So like that to me is more dangerous, is more offensive, is more obnoxious than anything Penn and Teller are doing with this show. That's just me. And yeah, you weren't butthurt. You weren't being butthurt. Um, Tessa, I have Tessa. I don't know why I wrote this. Tessa, it's just the tip of the iceberg. I don't know what that means. Um, I don't know why I wrote that. But Patriot Act is a good call. I think there's a good connection there. Like it's somewhat, yeah, it's kind of what Hassan Minhaj is doing with Patriot Act now on Netflix. Um, and it's fantastic. It's fantastic. And I think Hassan is a little less snarky and obnoxious than Penn is for sure. So it makes that a little makes it a little easier to digest. Um, yeah, I can't remember why I wrote that, Tessa. I'm sorry. Um, but it is only the tip of the iceberg. I mean, we can all agree on that, right? But I don't think they want you to just believe them either. I think you guys, most of you guys got that. Like, I think if you were like, if you said to them, that's bullshit, they'd be like, yeah, maybe, but if it is, tell us why, right? Like, you become a part of this. Um, which that leads me to um, Krista's comment. I really liked your comment, Krista, about you know we've put the onus in classic fashion, put the onus on individuals or citizens to save all this shit. Where if we had gone back and said, no, businesses, corporations, whatever, why don't you just not make shitty things? Why don't you just not abuse the resources and the environment in the first place? Then we don't have to, you know, we don't have to do all this whole dog and pony show with recycling and changing the way that we live and Im- Im- impinging on the way we live just to sort of cover your asses. Um, I thought that was an interesting way to look at it. Like, who's it now? We feel like we're responsible for changing and saving the environment, saving the planet. Like it's our fault, and now we have to fix it. Well, it's really not like mine or your fault. It's the fault of greed and excess, and sort of a nah, fuck 'em attitude. So I liked that. Uh, they don't want you to be on their side unless you're unless you've determined it the right side. I don't know what that means. I think that's my process of belief thing. It's like they're not saying if you're not on our side, fuck you. They're saying if you're not on our side, understand why you're not. And if you are, understand why you are. That's that's my takeaway. And I'm sorry if I'm being redundant about that, but I don't know. I think it's good to have things. It's good to hear multiple sides and multiple opinions and various data. And we really don't see it. I mean, you don't see it anymore, or so much anymore. So you can say it's all bullshit. I won't. I won't even stop you.